nach dem 30. Januar 1933. Natürlich hatten sie schon die ganzen letzten Monate
Berta Allerhand Landré, 1902 to 1982, made a 35-hour audio recording of stories from her life. There are 67 playlists, each the side of a cassette tape. In playlist 40, Berta, her husband Jean, and their 6-month-old baby Yannick live in Cologne when Hitler takes power on January 30, 1933.
A new chapter, after the 30th of January 1933. Of course we had spent the last several months fearing that the Nazis could take power. Stronger, though, was our hope that it wouldn't come to this. But now we were deeply and profoundly worried. We asked ourselves what lay ahead, for us and for all of Germany. The first blow wasn't directly at us, but at our friend Jupp Derichsweiler. Not 3 weeks had gone by when he received notice in the school where he had taught for 14 years. He was, by reason of his unsuitable attitude toward the education of children, immediately terminated. This in spite of the fact that his length of service had long since earned him tenure as a government official. He went to the central office. His superiors shrugged their shoulders apologetically. Yes, he has a reputation as a beloved and competent teacher, and on the face of it his termination was of course unlawful, he was told. But in the current situation we are powerless. While he was there, colleagues from other parts of the city arrived with similar notices, and as he was leaving he encountered even more. Soon we were hearing all around us of government officials being fired, whether it be for political reasons or because they were Jewish. Everywhere now, people were asking to see the so-called Ahnenpässe, or ancestor passports. Only those who could prove that among their 8 great-grandparents not a single one was a Jew were recognized as pure Aryans. Now, all of a sudden, nothing was more important.
Jean's father had always been doing research into the genealogy of his family, who laid claim to the French King Henry IV as their ancestor, the Good King, known for promoting a chicken in every pot in the common people's Sunday dinner. He sent Jean an Ahnenpass, or ancestor passport, beautiful and certified by various official institutions. Jean immediately had this forwarded to Berlin to the head office of the VDB, the Volksverband der Bücherfreunde. He hoped they would not also ask for his wife's. For the time being, they seemed satisfied. A few months later, however, he was asked to join the Reichsschrifttumskammer, a division of the Reich Cultural Chamber in charge of supervising all professions in the book industry. Jean kept postponing this until one of the gentlemen from Berlin, with whom he was quite friendly, came to Cologne for the annual inspection. Jean invited him to our home for lunch, and I made an effort to cook something particularly good. Sophisticated dishes like those that became popular after the Second World War were not yet known among the middle class, but my cooking was very much appreciated, despite the cheap crockery, which embarrassed me. However, these inspections always came unannounced, and since Jean had told me only the evening before, I had no time to go into town and buy better plates. Those were expenses that would normally exceed our budget. Since mussels were always fresh and very cheap to come by in Cologne, having been shipped on freighters on the Rhine River from the sea overnight, I chose those as a starter. This was followed by a delicious French leek soup, then the tried and tested Viennese schnitzel, and rounded off by a Palatschinken, or pancake. I procured a bottle of Mosel wine to accompany the meal. The guest obviously enjoyed the food, and he praised my cooking skills. Over coffee, the conversation turned to the delicate topic of the Reichsschrifttumskammer. Proof of Aryan ancestry was required, and my father was fully Jewish. As far as I am concerned, I will do everything in my power to ensure we can keep you without this vexatious membership issue. We are satisfied with your work, and I hope this gang won't be in power for long. He appeared frightened by his own words and quickly added, I assume that you feel this way too. We reassured him that that was the case.
We did not tell him that Jean and I were thinking of emigrating. We would have focused on this more intensely had not a comrade from the party leadership come to our apartment in early February and come straight to the point. "We have looked into your case, comrades. You are among the party members who must not emigrate under any circumstances. You have only recently come to Cologne, did not join the party under your real names, and you have an apartment that we urgently need. There are many comrades we must get out of the country at all costs. Most of them come from the interior, and they will spend their last night and last day in Germany in your apartment. The following night they will be picked up and taken across the Belgian or Dutch border." We were trained in party discipline. Also, at a personal level, it would have seemed wrong if comrades' lives were at risk and one was able to help to not do our part. In those first months, hardly a night passed without shooting in the street, even in Buchforst, which seemed so peaceful and removed from events. But here in the so-called White City, because of the colour of the buildings, there were no arrests, at least none that we knew of. This was in contrast to the neighbouring suburbs of Kalk and Mülheim. And yet, even a few weeks in, we were still startled and alarmed when the doorbell rang at 11 or 12 at night. Jean would hastily put on his coat and tiptoe downstairs to open the door. Usually Jupp Derisweiler was standing outside with a comrade. "Until tomorrow night," he would whisper and quickly take his leave. I had already made up a bed in the living room. I cracked a few eggs into the frying pan, which, along with a stack of buttered bread, the exhausted man would greedily devour. Then, without saying much, he would fall into bed and drop off into a deep sleep. The next day, I cooked an especially ample meal, usually a huge plate of roasted potatoes, and prepared a decent supply of sandwiches for the journey to the border on the back of Jupp's motorcycle. Sometimes one of the comrades, I would never ask their name, they never introduced themselves, would slip me a mark. "Take it, comrade. Yes, go ahead. I'll get a little money before crossing the border, and they'll take care of me over there." Since I had worked in Paris for a while in the Secours Rouge, an organization that assisted persecuted communists, I had no illusions about what would await them. Already then, in 1926, I got grief for giving some of the poor devils who had fled various countries to come to France more than the meagre sums allotted to them. Now that they were crossing over in droves, I could only imagine how things would work out for the new arrivals. I never saw any of our nightly guests again. By 1945 I had long left Cologne, and in any event very few returned. Most of them headed to Spain in 1934 to fight with the International Brigade against Franco. Those who weren't killed in that cruel civil war made their way, defeated and desperate, across the Pyrenees to France. There they landed in the internment camp at Gurs, where they either fell apart or, when the Germans eventually occupied the south of France, were conscripted for the most dangerous deployments.
The next 3 scripts are translated but have not yet been read. Please be in touch if you would like to do a reading. They are on the website. Briefly described. In Part 2, an unusually tall man is dropped off and, concerningly, doesn't get picked up right away. The upstairs neighbor is keen on showing her ardor for the Nazis and pries into the family's home life, spreading word that as a Jew, Berta made the neighborhood impure. In Part 3, the man is still not picked up after several days. Berta is out with her baby and sees his image on a wanted poster warning of summary execution for withholding information about him. She decides on the spot to wean Yannick, lest she herself is shot before being able to do it. In Part 4, the man, who identifies himself as Jules Alt, is picked up more than a week later. He sends a postcard from Brussels saying he has arrived. From there, the stories continue with Martin Landré's translation and reading about an offset printer with deadly implications.
"Hopefully we will stay a while without having visitors," I said when we went to bed that evening. But only a few days later Jupp brought us a young happy comrade who promptly got fetched the next night. Later, I didn't know anymore how many there were, until Jeb came alone one night and asked whether he could have my bed that day. "They are after me now," he said, "and I cannot go to our apartment anymore. Greta went with Hanschen to her brother in Dessau. He's the police chief there, and I suppose they are safe with him." The next day Jeb left after I made sure that the street looked empty. "I will come back in a few days. Every night I have to sleep somewhere else." However, after a few days he didn't come at night, but one afternoon with a big parcel wrapped in dark sackcloth. "A comrade brought me this with his tricycle delivery van," he said. "It's a small hand-setting machine, and it has to disappear. Jean must leave it at the railway station luggage storage when he goes to his work and preferably burn the ticket. I have to go now. Bye." Jeb had put the parcel in a corner, where Jules always used to sit. I avoided looking at it, for the view was enough in itself to give me a very uncomfortable feeling. I wanted to get rid of that thing as soon as possible. That's why I got annoyed when Jean refused to strap the unwieldy big parcel on his bike and to deliver it at the railway station. "That is a stupid idea from Jup. It doesn't make any sense that you mention it again. I refuse." I extended my afternoon walk with the child especially long, in order not to look at the parcel that was giving me such a fright. I was hardly at home when Jeb arrived. He was grave-faced. "Did Jean take it?" he whispered, barely after having closed the door behind him. "No," I said, and started panicking. Immediately he entered the living room. "Thank goodness, alien," he shouted, and there came color in his face again. Today there was an ongoing luggage check at the storeroom, and I don't know yet how many comrades have been arrested who wanted to do the same. Apparently more comrades have come up with this idea the last few weeks, and now they have opened the unclaimed parcels, and God knows what they all found. "But I don't want to have that thing any longer," I shouted. "Don't worry, I will fetch it tonight with the comrades with the delivery van. We will try to throw it somewhere down the Rhine. How many dangerous things Mr. Rhine, especially this first year, have carried to the North Sea."
A book burning. Right after the Reichstag fire, Jean and I gave our shelves of books a fairly rigorous inspection, which led to differences of opinion. I insisted on tossing certain items that Jean desperately wanted to keep. We burned all the brochures. Luckily, we thought to go outside to see what was coming out of the chimney. Pages that were only half burned fluttered merrily in the breeze. We waited until nighttime and stoked a much hotter fire. Using a poker, we raked each page over the grate until only gray ashes remained. We packed bound books that seemed particularly dangerous in a suitcase and tied it up tightly with twine. We took it to Jean's parents in Aachen and put it in the cellar. "Take good care of these books," Jean pleaded. We skipped meals to save up for some of them. The next year a pipe burst and the basement was flooded for several days. When the suitcase got pulled out, everything was apparently so moldy that there was nothing to do but throw it in the garbage. That might have suited Jean's brother Fritz, who in the meantime had joined the party.
He had been going steady with a Jewish girl, Martha Franken, from a well-off family for 10 years. The wedding had been postponed because Fritz was unemployed. Originally, he had had the intention to become an officer in the Marine and had actually moved up to being a low-level officer. At the end of the war, he had been discharged at age 23 without having learned anything else. There was no hope to find a position with the Merchant Marine because they were woefully underfunded. Finally, and thanks to the connection of his father, and for almost no income, he found employment at a local bank in Aachen. Having no skills and no income, he was laid off soon, but found another position in a different local bank in 1929, though again for very low salary. The elegant Martha was used to spending money and expected to continue with her lifestyle. Between 1931 and 33, she often came for the weekend to see B and Jean in Cologne, and she made good use of the couch that should later provide nightly rest to so many unknown guests. After Hitler took power in 1933, Fritz was hesitant to be seen publicly with Martha. He had used to ask her, "Say, couldn't we set ourselves up like B and Jean? With your money, we would even have a little more to spend." And she had clearly refused and said, "No, I could not live in such a tiny apartment, and I do not want to contribute to the household from my fortune." Now he was glad for that response. The last time B had seen them together in Aachen, Fritz referred to Martha in her presence as "my little Jew." Martha had not said anything, but B had asked him angrily, "Am I also just your brother's little Jew?" "Oh, come on, that was just a joke." "Not nowadays."
At this visit in Aachen, I also got to know Jean's older sister Jeanette, who went by the name Nignon. She lived in Berlin and was married to a senior executive at IG Farben. Already years ago she had converted to Catholicism, to the great pain of her Huguenot father, and since then had become a devoted churchgoer. Her husband possessed the golden party badge of the NSDAP. Inevitably, we got to talking about political events. Jean's father and his other sister Yvonne were just as staunch opponents of Nazis as he himself. Fritz only slowly swung over to embracing the new order. Nignon defended the Nazis. Certainly not everything is 100% pleasant, but what self-esteem, what sense of cohesion did Hitler gift the German people in this relatively short time? You have to admit that it's admirable how quickly he succeeded in getting Germany out of its darkest time back into the light. "And what is your position with regard to the questions of the Jews?" I interjected. "When a whole people is rising up, a few hundred dead Jews are irrelevant. Surely those are best advised who are looking for a new homeland. There won't be a hardship for them. They have always been wanderers and are used to it." "So where do you advise me to go?" "Don't be childish. Not for a moment did I think of you. As Jean's wife and Yannick's mother, you are, of course, German and belong here." However, a few years later, when he visited Nignon in Berlin, she advised Jean to divorce me and that it would also be better to remove the child from the Jewish influence. Though our marriage at that time had many cracks, no doubt aggravated by the constant nervous tension of the times, Jean lost his temper over this to the degree that during the ensuing argument he beat on her with his fists, something he generally got carried away with easily. He packed his suitcase, and when he left the apartment, he yelled, "That you are not ashamed to hit your sister because of a Jew!" As stated, that happened later.
In the next clip, not yet translated, Jupp goes underground. He expresses confidence that the Nazis won't last 6 months just before he is arrested along with some of his other nightly hosts. Berta reflects that it could have easily been her and Jean, leaving their baby defenseless.
Noch einmal zurück ins Jahr des Unheils 1933. Jupp lebte nun im Untergrund und übernachtete ungefähr einmal in der Woche bei B und Jean. Eines Morgens ging er später fort als gewohnt, denn B hatte ihm noch einen abgerissenen Knopf an seiner Hose und anschließend gleich mehrere Lose an Hose und Joppe festgenäht. Jupp war an diesem Morgen besonders optimistisch. Ich komme doch viel herum, sagte er und beobachte die Stimmung. Die Genossen erzählen, wie es in den Betrieben aussieht. Du, der Spuk, hält sich höchstens noch ein halbes Jahr.